We've got Jake Scott, the head of community at MyNFT. We've got Shervin Sameni, the Ascent program manager at Outlier Ventures. And after listening to Max Murphy this morning from Congregate, we now have the CEO and CFO of Congregate, Markus Lipp. And then finally, we have Sullivan, a general partner at Two Punks. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Well, so it was my idea for the title of this panel, and I have chosen very light language when I have talked about gamers and their attitudes towards NFTs. Obviously, when I've said, why do gamers disregard NFTs, it's more like, why have traditional gamers seem to fucking hate them? That is the honest truth of it, right? And for all of us and everyone here, it's very confusing almost, because we all thought that gamers would be the best suited group to NFTs. They know digital assets, they live in the closed Steam economy, and they understand digital tokens. And yet, as we've already seen, it's been a bit of an uphill battle. So personally, I've had experience in blockchain gaming since 2017. Has anyone heard of metaworms before? No one? No? Right. Well, I'll tell you a little story about that in a moment. But so I've worked in blockchain games since 2017, and I can safely say I've experienced the highs and the lows of doing so. So I don't know if we want to just do a little intro of ourselves first and then go around. Yeah?
Yeah, let's do that. My name is Markus Lipp. I'm the CEO and CFO of Congregate. We started to, like Max Murphy mentioned earlier, to actually engage with blockchain back in 2019 to find out if users on the platform would adopt the mechanic, the tech around it, the opportunity to trade, not really having a monetary approach directly behind it, rather really finding out how appealing it is coming from Web 2 and adding Web 3 elements. We went further into building games with a mix on Web 2, Web 3. We recently announced the Bitverse, had our first NFT drop, and we will launch 3 projects on the Bitverse in November, actually. So getting out utility, allowing users to find a combination of Web 2, finding Web 3 in a certain mix to allow them to adopt at their own pace with it, right? We certainly, also a very interesting component that I quickly wanted to mention, when we engaged with the community in Bitverse in the early days, it was still when there was a lot of speculation out of everything in the market. So with us telling a bit more what we actually try to intend with the project, we warmed up the community to really understand that this might become a pretty interesting project, not really forcing them into anything, rather, as I said, adopting it at their own pace. So that was, I think, the moment where they said, well, I might not still like NFTs, but I really appreciate what you guys are doing here in creating ownership elements and bringing the game to the next level. So some interesting stuff to share here for sure.
Yeah. Do you want to do an intro?
Yeah, so I'm Sullivan, general partner at Two Punks Capital. Two Punks Capital is a seed stage venture firm. We invest in consumer crypto companies. We're looking for the companies that will build products that the next 200 million adopters of crypto will take part in. And that includes the world of gaming, digital fashion, digital ticketing, various things. We're investors in companies like Token Proof. We're investing in several game studios and among other things. My background has been in the gaming industry for the last 10 years. So I was originally an early employee at Zynga, so kind of on the free-to-play frontier at the time, which gamers also fucking hated. And now they spend billions and billions of dollars in it. So, you know, people just hate change in general, and so it's going to take a little while to build the entertainment experiences that people truly love and start to use in blockchain gaming. I also spent 4 years as a director of product at Unity Technologies, so I've been at the forefront of 3D content creation, game monetization, and working with pretty much every game studio in the world in those areas. I left Unity a couple of years ago, saw NFTs, saw the new platform emerging, got really deeply involved in collecting NFTs, and then was one of the people in the founding round of Ready Player DAO last year, which is one of the largest gaming investment DAOs and gaming guild supporters, and been involved in many of the projects. I think that we're talking about with Immutable as both investors and figuring out like how players get onboarded to that easier. So happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Shervin from Outlier Ventures. What I do there is work in the Ascend program where we work on token launch advisory. So it's the other side of the business next to the accelerator arms. It's rather later stage projects that plan to go out to market with a token within 6 months. We have a bunch of NFT projects in there as well, or gaming studios even now. Main one I work with is Crypto Walkers, if you heard of it. Fluff World is part of our portfolio, but we invested in them before we launched the accelerator arm. And on a personal level, I was an investment banker before I came over to Web3. Spent my whole notice period flipping NFTs. Therefore, I'm well aware of the divergence between actual speculators, investors, and gamers. And I feel like there's a lot of work to do before NFTs become accessible to gaming. And there's a lot of very valuable applications like skins, which is $1 billion market, or in-game assets. Whereas I think the first thought of spending, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars to get an NFT, to get access to play a game where you potentially earn something, is not really at the forefront of where the space is headed anymore.
So yeah, I mean, talking obviously about like the current state or possibly looking kind of backwards, obviously blockchain gaming kind of, well, I don't want to say it kick-started, but 2017 was definitely when obviously the non-fungible standard came through with CryptoKitties, and the games at the time that were available, if you want to argue that CryptoKitties is a game, weren't very good. They weren't very fun. So you could understand at that time that gamers who would try them would say, well, this isn't a game, this is just you're breeding cats. So you could understand back then. Obviously, it's nice now that the trend has changed towards, as we saw on the previous presentation, that we've gone from going for an NFT project that then has a gamified use case to now having games, solid AAA games that will have NFTs, or perhaps we'll have to start calling them digital assets again, as we did pre-2017. So I guess a question for people on the panel here is, I mean, what, in your experience, what have you seen gamers resisting to? Is there a particular format that you think that they really dislike? Is there anything you've seen in particular? I mean, I'll start with one particular project that we were working on. So we were working with Team 17 in my previous employment, and we were creating a NFT Worms game. So obviously everyone remembers the classic Worms battling. Everyone used to love building a team. You'd have different weapons. They'd be hilarious. They'd have great sound effects. And we wanted to work with Team 17 on a concept of those were digital assets. Each NFT, each worm could be unique. You could build teams out of them. And it seemed to be a great concept. And we launched this with Team 17. And there was an official, I don't know how official this could be, an official bullying campaign on Twitter. So a group of people, and including Games Press, decided that they would be as aggressive as possible. They would go into Discords, like Team 17's Discord, and say, I'm not going to play any more of your games unless you stop this now. And I personally, because I was head of community at the time and front-facing, I had people messaging me. I must have had about 20, 25 people saying, go kill yourself, which is pretty wild when you think that you're trying to just make a game to entertain people. I loved playing Worms when I was young. I don't want to spit on the IP. I want to make something good and fun for people. And yet, one of the messages I got, and this is kind of a surrounding issue about gamers and NFTs, was, instead of killing the planet, why don't you try killing yourself? And I literally went to the person, nice one, that was actually a good one. I'm going to tokenize that as an NFT just to rub it in a bit. But yeah, I mean, have you guys had such a wild reaction or kind of experienced anything like that from gamers?
Oh, thank God, no. threats that way, but as I mentioned earlier, we try to understand the community from early on to really see, is there something we can adjust with regards to educating the direction. I think just looking at the broader scene, there are a couple of elements that certainly play into that NFT hater behavior. I think everything that starts with early speculation in the scene, rather seeing guys coming from DeFi over, buying NFTs, selling them the next day, this certainly didn't help gaming to become an established place, marketplace, whatever, for really buying your, let's say, opportunity to engage with the game. So speculation didn't help. We now see in the beer market this kind of drifting out and collectors coming in, gamers coming in with a fair approach. We also see prices dropping. So I think everything we see right now is certainly helping to exactly build what we already experienced. Max mentioned it earlier, when free-to-play came in, right? Everybody hated that too. So it's not new. Nevertheless, I think a second component is fearing pay-to-win or balancing of the game. Could NFTs affect that in a way? And I think this is a legit question. We all need to make sure that we are building games where balancing elements are considered, right? And nobody wants to kill them, but you don't need NFTs to do that. You can also do it in free-to-play. So this argument is also not new. And I think a third element is certainly the onboarding aspect of education, like the wallet creation. That was also part of the earlier discussion in the panels. It's still a battle to really educate users to go there, right? They just want to play the game. They probably are reluctant to really sell on for this. It's like going to the internet in the early 90s. It's still a huge hill to climb. And these three factors were certainly key concerns that we observed, but we also tried to mitigate solutions in overcoming this.
You guys, have you had any experience of, or do you know why gamers hate NFTs so much?
Well, part of the reason gamers hate NFTs is part of the reason that people hate crypto in general, right? And there's a million of those, and I think that the negative sides of gaming and crypto gaming get amplified constantly. And so if you are not sort of deeply involved on a day-to-day basis, seeing the positives or whatever, really all the people hear about is, people getting scammed and stuff getting stolen and the hack on what's the bridge of Axie. Like, I mean, honestly, the last 9 months has been an unmitigated disaster PR-wise for the entire crypto community and the entire gaming community in crypto. So like, what's to like right now, honestly, right? Like, where is the positive story that will change the minds of people that don't want to change in the first place and really have just heard a bunch of negative things? And one of the other aspects of gamers not liking NFTs is I talk to studio heads like over Electronic Arts and stuff, and they're like, my development team won't even let me say NFT, right? So like like game designers, game software engineers, all these people are also resistant to the change of what's coming here. So it's really going to take some innovative small companies to prove the models here. And we thought that we had kind of an inkling of some of the models starting to get proved last year with Axie of like, okay, look, this is ramping up a user base. This has a different kind of economic approach. But as far as I'm concerned, like we're kind of back at ground zero from like, what's a viable economic approach to gaming? I believe the really only proven viable approach right now is CCGs. If you look at something like Magic the Gathering Online, it's effectively like not on a blockchain, but like as NFT close as you can get. That's been around, not the new Magic game online, the one that's been out for 10 years, not the free-to-play one. And then, looking at we have to find other models. And so I'm hoping that people figure out the economics of it so that people actually see the benefit of using NFTs in the entertainment experience.
And I suppose Immutable X, who obviously we're just on, have done a great job on CCG with Gods Unchained. I personally play Gods Unchained and have loved it for many years now, so that they're definitely doing a good job there. What about yourself? Any experience or thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think the friction is one of the main concerns, right? If you look at NFTs these days, there's two models commonly in the space. Either you pay up front, and it becomes somewhat speculative, and then you don't know what you get in return, because it's basically a way of VC investing and fundraising for a project, and then they make you a future promise of something, and many of them never built a game. Or they have very specific experience that doesn't resonate with the whole breadth you need of developing a game. The other alternative is Treasure DAO, of which I'm a huge fan. It tries to be the Nintendo somewhat of the NFT and crypto space, where they want to flourish this like free mint model, right? Then you have all the people from emerging countries coming and farming their NFTs and dumping them because, hey, they gotta eat. So both extremes don't really work so far, right? And Steppen was really cool in the sense that they allowed an easy way for custodial wallet creation in-app, which I think helped a lot of users onboard to the space, because you don't want to be sitting there, making a seed phrase, writing it down, on-ramping, just way too complicated, way too much friction until we get all these things out of the way. I don't think the gaming space can become that massive. But then when we have trends like, Solana's phone now, that cut off middlemen like the App Store, the Google Store eventually, that won't charge you 30% plus fees on any in-game asset you want to sell, that actually gives studios the room to like offer things and price them fairly and users to adopt them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously on the subject of kind of Apple, we launched a game in 2017, which was a mobile game called Reality Clash. And as you saw before, again, there was the third stage was going to be games with NFTs. And that's what we made in 2017. We made an augmented reality combat game called Reality Clash that had the weapons in the game that were digital assets. But because it was before NFTs were created, like the concept of NFT, they were just called digital assets and you owned your weapons. But at the time, nobody cared, like partly because it was a free-to-play mobile game. We talked about how difficult those are, and partly because nobody cared about NFTs back then either. But it was already, an example of us trying to make a game that was fun to play first, and then just happened to have digital assets. So, I mean, that was one of our views even back then of how we make gamers enjoy or appreciate NFTs or overcome this like hurdle that is misinformation. It's YouTubers telling gamers NFTs are bad, and therefore they just then have that opinion. They don't need to go and look into it. But with these people, once you talk to them and you explain, oh, this system could be a little bit better if you actually owned it. If you went on Steam and you didn't give Gabe your money and then Gabe just keeps it in his economy and that's it. I mean, we already know how many times were there attempts to get skins out of CSGO, like to trade them on BitSkins or Bitly or whatever else. People want to do it. Gamers want to have that ownership of assets, but they just seem to have kind of like been given this misinformation that's kind of said to them that you don't want this. And obviously games companies, there's as you said before, there's developers who are not interested in it. Is that because they don't want or they don't understand, or they just don't feel that it's useful?
Well, I'm going to defend the game company a little bit there on that kind of thing, because there is sort of an economic model by which they make their money, right? And so if somebody has to play CSGO for like a year to earn a skin, and their money in is $200, $300, $400 to get that skin, for them to turn around when they stop playing the game on the secondary market and drop the skin for $5, like starts to destroy like the progression and the overall like how the game works and how the monetization works for the studio. So that's where I say that like new models have to be created around the expectation that things will be tradable, and to figure out how both the studio and the player benefit from that economic design.
So yeah, I guess like I've been kind of doom and gloom in some ways about like gamers hate NFTs, oh dear. But what are some positives that you guys have got that you can see coming up? What good things have changed now?
I think we see a lot of interoperability coming up, specifically around projects that we are currently launching, trying to really allow users taking their NFT outside the game into associated projects that come up with partnerships that we are working on, which is a huge opportunity because it's not really affecting any advantage in the game, kind of destroying the elements of balancing that we mentioned earlier, while giving you a specific place to interact with others, right? So this is certainly very interesting for us. We also see a lot of developers from the Web2 space actually entering into discussions with us, trying to hop on Web3 elements as well, combining both, like we did with our projects. So that might be a good entry point, not forcing anyone from A to B, rather migrating them slowly in the pace they choose, right? And if you don't like it, you don't have to. It's an opportunity for you. You can still have fun with Web 2, get the education done, and maybe come over to Web 3 when you are ready. I think this is a very positive element that we have seen from interacting with communities, partners, developers, and gamers, of course, right?
Yeah, the good news of last year was that it really accelerated the amount of studios that are looking at the creative space and trying to figure out something to do there, right? And so you went from nobody paying attention to it all to every single game studio in the world trying to figure out a title or something they could do that incorporates NFTs. So I think the next year we're going to start to see different things come out, and then hopefully one of those things will be a winner. What companies need to do is prove that this composability has value, right? Like I hear people talk about it all the time. You know, you get to own it, you get to own it, you get to own it. Like, yeah, but like kind of who cares, right? I kind of own my stuff in Call of Duty, but like, you know, if the game, like I can't, that doesn't mean anything until, and then you have to have two studios that want to like cooperate in a way that you can take something from one game and put it into a different environment, and it doesn't even have to be a game, and that it'll have entertainment value in that new environment, right? And then you have to align the economic incentives for why the people building that environment would want to use the thing in that game, and why the people in that game want to make it interoperable with that environment over there. And that's that general larger idea of the metaverse, right, where things start to become more and more composable. The hard part is, and I think what you see with NFTs and all the promises of we're going to build a game with an NFT, it's really easy to build an avatar. It's really easy to build game assets. It's really, really hard to build environments. It's really, really hard to build an entire creative experience that incorporate like some of those elements that get created really quickly.
I suppose so. Yeah, it's great collaboration amongst developers and game studios. That's a definite positive trend that we're seeing with this, partly because you have to have collaboration to have this interoperability, but also because we're generally moving from a siloed kind of development world to a remote, global, unsiloed, collaborative type of work. So.
Yeah, in terms of the NFT space, what we've seen in the last 1 or 2 years, right? There's just so much creative destruction. The space keeps really reinventing itself, and I think that's what's really needed as well, right? And we have all these funds that raise records of amounts of capital, and gaming is one of the key areas they want to deploy that money. And building a game is expensive, right? So previously, an NFT project going out, selling JPEGs for a few $100K, like, making a future promise of building a game, which is probably a bit unrealistic. But now you actually have the firepower behind it. You have the institutions that know how to build these things and scale them, trying to enter the space. And I think this trend of like Web 2.5 is great, because we used to have these maximalist camps that said, either everything is centralized or decentralized and they can't touch each other. But if I can choose if I want to use my wallet or my email address to access my portfolio or game or assets, this again helps remove this friction.
Okay, I think, we've still got some time. We've got the clock had reset there, confusingly. I'll just go around and do some kind of like final thoughts. So I'm currently working for My NFT, so I'm obviously just going to shill the vending machine that we've got outside. Make sure you go and use it. This is great content in there. At My NFT, we are an NFT marketplace. We're multi-chain. We have our own patented auction system, GBM, which you'll find also very, very interesting. And our kind of goal is we believe in a multi-chain future. We think that you can have chains that are suitable for one particular sector. You can have chains that are suitable for other particular tasks or goals. We're really that's what we want to support. And so there is a great selection of multiple chain NFTs in the machine, and all the proceeds are going to charity. So put your hands in your pockets and go give to charity. All right. Any final thoughts?
So I made my purchase earlier, by
Yes,
the way.
yes,
I
yeah.
really like the idea of the vending machine. No, I mean, just a final thought. We will go further in, let's say, finding usability for the games we launch and starting from there to actually approach users. Not with, you know, a drop earlier and maybe a game coming next year. I think this is a hard setup if you really start that way. Gamers want to see excitement, want to get usability and usage of the project, and I think taking it from there and developing it into the next stage and the next stage is the right approach.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, game has to be, like the whole IP has to be ready, right? Because people don't have patience for the long-term thing. The thing that made me really optimistic last year about what's coming, though, is to see like the positive with the NFT projects is like the community, right? And so people actually putting so much economic value on like owning a digital asset and seeing the value, because games communities have done this for years and years and years. Like this is where things are very congruent. Like they are some of the most powerful communities in the digital world are gamer communities, and people love a certain game and play and interact with that. And that should be able to connect to sort of the spark and the emotional connection that NFT community ownership has started to tap into. So I'm looking forward to the combination and what that's going to look like. It's going to be huge.
And yeah, maybe to bridge what I do at Outlier Ventures with our discussion here. I do token launch advisory, but I don't really like tokens. And especially I don't like gaming tokens. And a lot of projects just want to make a token for the sake of having a token. I think the most important piece is having adoption and a working in-game ecosystem on top of which you can then build and launch a token. And yeah, that's what we help projects with, so feel free to reach out.
Okay, I think that's all we got time for. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.